Ever wonder why you're being priced out of the Australian dream? You work hard, you save, you show up to auctions on Saturday morning, hoping this is the one, only to be blown out of the water by a bid that absolutely make no sense. Well, turns out you're not just competing with other families and investors with deep pockets, you're also bidding against international criminal syndicates. The Australian property market has a dark secret. It's become one of world's favorite laundromats for billions of dollars in illegal cash. It is a haven for dirty money and it's skewing the entire market. While you're struggling to secure a home, organized criminals are using Australian houses to wash the profit from trafficking, corruption, and exploitation. This isn't a victimless crime, it is a major reason why the dream of owning a property is slipping away for millions of ordinary Australians, and the scale of this problem is enormous. For decades, we have been told that owning a property is the key to secure life in Australia. But look at the market today. It feels broken. House prices have become completely detached from wages, and the goalposts for first home buyers seem to get further away every single year. We are told it's just supply and demand, low interest rate, or foreign investment. And while these things play a part, they don't tell the whole story. There is a much more sinister force at play, and one that we have been warned about for over 15 years. Australian Financial Intelligence Agency, AUSTRAC, has repeatedly flagged the real estate sector as a high risk channel for money laundering. In particular, in its 2024 National Risk Assessment, AUSTRAC stated that real estate is a popular vehicle for criminals looking to launder or conceal their illicit funds. This means for international drug cartels, corrupt officials, and crime bosses, Australian property is the perfect way to turn billions in dirty money into clean, legitimate, and stable assets. Criminals are drawn to Australia real estate for a few key reasons. First, you can move enormous sum of money in a single transaction. Second, property is a secure, reliable investment that holds its value and can even generate legitimate looking rental income. Third, Australia is a solid Western democracy with a predictable and stable economy where everyone speaks English, all attractive features for international criminals. And finally, for years, Australia has had a glaring loophole in its law that criminals have exploited. Differently to the major international counterparts, Australia hasn't had anti-money laundering laws applying to the real estate transactions. So how all of this work, how cash from a drug deal in another country can end up in a deposit in a multi-million dollar waterfront mansion in Sydney or a luxury apartment in Melbourne. First, the dirty cash has to be slipped into the financial system. This can take different forms. Criminal can commingle funds into a seemingly legitimate business. For example, they can use a cash intensive business like a car wash and use fake invoices to justify the illegitimate cash. Or they can make a series of small cash deposits into multiple bank accounts, always keeping the amount just below the reporting threshold to avoid raising red flags. In other cases, for example, for fraud or tax evasion, criminals' activities had not produced cash and the illegitimate money is already in the financial system, so they don't have to do this commingling or this structuring phase. Once the money is in the bank, the goal is to create as much distance and confusion as possible between the money and its criminal source. Illicit funds are used to buy property, but to hide who really owns the property, the owner doesn't buy them directly. Instead, they use a clean skin. Friends, relatives, or associates with clean records who pretend to be the owner. Alternatively, criminals can create legal structures like company, shell companies, or trust, often set up by professionals and maybe through the use of secretive overseas jurisdictions, making it harder for authorities to figure out who the true owner is. This process of muddying the water can be repeated several times. Criminals use cash for huge renovation, artificially inflating a property's value before selling it for a clean profit. They engage in rapid flipping, buying and selling properties in a quick succession to muddy the paper trail. They even collude at auctions with multiple buyers from the same criminal group, bidding up the price to legitimate a large sum of dirty money in a single sale. Finally, the criminals can sell the property and use the fund for other investment, either in legitimate or illegitimate businesses, or they can enjoy the property they bought or use it as an investment or for generate income like a commercial property or a rental property. There are many so-called gatekeepers involved in this process: the real estate agents, the lawyers, and the accountants who facilitate these multi-million dollars deals, who at the time of recording have no legal duty to report any suspicious activity to the Financial Intelligence Unit. While banks have been under strict anti-money laundering rules for almost 2 decades, these other professionals have not. This made Australia a glaring anomaly among developing nations, a vulnerability that has been exploited on a massive scale. The Australian Federal Police Criminal Assets Confiscation Task Force is continuously seizing hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, and real estate is consistently a top target. Let's look at some cases. In early 2023, the AFP busted a Sydney-based syndicate that provided what they called industrial-scale money laundering services for some of the world's most dangerous criminals. The task force restrained over $150 million in assets, including 2 luxury homes in Sydney eastern suburb worth over $19 million combined, multiple commercial buildings, and a massive 360-hectare parcel of land worth an estimated $47 million. More recently, in June 2025, a multi-agency investigation in Queensland dismantled an operation that washed millions in criminal proceeds. As part of the bust, the AFP-led task force restrained assets worth around $21 million, which included 17 different properties. And in August 2024, another Gold Coast investigation saw 7 waterfront properties worth nearly $13 million seized from 2 individuals alleged to have laundered money into Australia. These aren't isolated incidents, they are part of a clear and devastating pattern. Austrac has noted that criminals see Australia real estate as a safe place to park their illicit wealth, away from the prying eyes of authorities in their home countries. They use third parties' offshore accounts and complex corporate structures to buy property, to clean their money, and to secure their criminal fortunes. Every time a criminal syndicate pays hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions of the asking price for a property with dirty money, it doesn't just affect one sale. It sets a new artificial high benchmark for the entire suburb. It sends a ripple effect through the market, pushing prices up for everyone and locking legitimate buyers out. So why Australia? How did we become a global hotspot for property-based money laundering? Australia is one of the only developed nations that has failed to fully implement global anti-money laundering standards, while places like the European Union, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand have had laws for years requiring real estate agents, lawyers, and accountants to report suspicious transactions and activities in relation to real estate transactions. Australia has not. Casinos, banks, and financial institutions have been covered by anti-money laundering laws since the Anti-Money Laundering Act was passed in 2006. An amendment to the Act aimed to cover real estate agents, lawyers, accountants, conveyancers was promised shortly after, but for nearly 20 years it has been delayed, debated, and lobbied against by powerful interests. Criminals, like everyone, look for the path of least resistance, and for years that path has led straight away to Australia's property market. They knew that the very people facilitating the multi-million-dollar purchases, the real estate agents, the lawyers, the accountants, the conveyancers, had no legal obligation to report them. And when you run a business, especially a business that is based on commission, and you have no interest in asking uncomfortable questions, you might even turn blind eyes to close a deal. After years of international pressure and escalating crime, the Australian government has acted. Legislation was passed in November 2024 to finally bring in those long-awaited reforms. Starting from 1st of July 2026, real estate agents, conveyancers, lawyers, accountants, everybody dealing with real estate property transaction will be covered by anti-money laundering laws. This is a monumental shift. It means an estimated 80,000 new businesses and professionals will be legally required to know who their customers are, assess the risk, their money laundering risk, and report suspicious activity to the Australian Financial Intelligence Unit, or STRAC. This new reporting entity will need to verify the identity of anyone doing a real estate property transaction, either a purchase or a sale. They will need to monitor the client's behavior and the client's transaction for red flags. For example, watch out for a buyer that is using a complex and opaque corporate structure, funds coming from a high-risk country, someone wants to buy a luxury property without even seeing in it, or a signal of collusion between the buyer and the seller. They'll also have to report any cash transaction above $10,000 or more. For years, Australia failed to stop dirty money flowing into the real estate market. The reforms coming in July 2026 are a long overdue step forward in the right direction. For the first time, real estate agents, lawyers, conveyancers, and accountants who sit at the center of the transaction will be forced to ask hard questions, verify who they're really dealing with, and report suspicious behavior. This will make the Australian market much less attractive for international money laundering. But let's be clear, laws on paper don't automatically fix a broken system. This is the time for the sectors involved in the reform and the businesses that will be impacted by the new legislation to take action, understand the requirements, and apply them in their day-to-day work. Without businesses coming on board, the anti-money laundering reform will have no real effect. If you made it till here, thank you so much. My name is Julia. I'm a certified anti-money laundering specialist. In my day job, I help businesses comply with anti-money laundering laws. And here on YouTube, I talk about anti-money laundering, corruption, financial crimes. If you're interested, if you like this video, please comment, like, subscribe. You know the usual. It really helps the channel. Please also follow me on LinkedIn if you would like to, where I talk more about anti-money laundering on a more professional setting. And this is all for me now, and I'll see you on the next one.